I'd hung out with Malcolm for a while, but we eventually split up as it was getting late, giving me time to look over my updates. Quick hacks skill level up. 1 perk point gained. This was big all on its own. I'd finally managed to get quick hacks to 10. That last level up from 9 to 10 was really a slog, but I'd managed it. The feeling of surety in how to twist and alter data on the fly felt surreal. What was a quick hack, but a long hack already programmed and ready? Why not alter some variables when needed on the fly? It was a big jump, but as always the perk was even bigger. Level up achieved. 1 stat point gained. 1 skill point gained. I had leveled up once after killing so many demons. Dozens of the things had been spawned in that server. It wasn't quite as crazy as that first server that Yoko had tossed me into, but it was still an excellent spot for some practice. I'd have to see if I could go through it solo at some point. Sure, balancing defending against demons, and clearing server fortifications like that moat room would be a bit more than normal, but it was still just a server. Most importantly though, I needed to choose with my stat point. It was always so hard to choose. I wanted more adaptation for my Sandy, and I wanted more numbers for everything else. I sighed and just looked at intelligence. It was probably the best choice. Start getting some real specialty with netrunning, especially since Sasha asked me to join in her little challenge. Honestly, I did want to impress Lucy. Although she was probably my superior in netrunning. She probably wouldn't be using her deep dive port, but the girl was trained to dive beyond the black wall. She would be scary to deal with. I sighed and just decided. Pushing the point into intelligence. I startled as I heard a negative tone and then looked at my intelligence still at 14. Wait. Intelligence 14, due to cyberization, maximum value has increased by 4. I was already maxed out without more cyberware. I forgot. Looking around I relaxed. Driving through Night City meant no one had just seen me do something so stupid. Okay, so should I go get something new to pump my intelligence cyberization, or just start leveling another stat? Or I could put another point into my Sandy. I sighed. I really should focus on getting my net running up. I closed the stat page as I was at a red light and made a call. Kid, everything all right? Hey Vic, everything's fine. I'm on the lookout for something. You know of any good RAM upgrades, or something? I'm getting ready for a Netrunner challenge in a week, and I want to boost myself as much as I can. The light changed and I started driving. I don't have anything in stock, nothing that would be compatible with your net deck. Let me put out some calls. For my favorite customer I'll see what I can do. Thanks Vic. I'll try to look around as well. If you find something let me know. Sure kid. Talk to you soon. See ya. I changed my calls as I drove through the city. Motoko? Hey Hiromi, I need some new cyberware. I already asked Vic about it, and he's looking around, but I'm looking for a RAM upgrade. Oh. Okay, let me see. I have a list of rippers that we worked with last time. I'll ask around. Okay, just don't promise anything right away unless it's really good. I have Vic looking too. Don't worry Motoko. I won't let you chip in some scop chrome. Just give me a minute. Bye. The call closed and I couldn't help but chuckle, as always Hiromi was so energetic. Alright, that gave me time to look at the last reward. The perk. Quick Hacks 10, it honestly felt amazing to reach. An offensive skill finally reaching 10. The list of perks as always was long, and I browsed through them as I drove, as I parked, as I rode the elevator up, as I flopped on the couch. There were a lot of amazing options, but I had to pick just one. Ninja hacking, learn how to slip hacks below notice. The perks knowledge flooded me, and I had to stop for a moment and just close my eyes to process. Mostly because it was just full of mathematics and ways of thinking. Netrunning wasn't a science really. There was an art to it. An understanding of how to insert a program to get the longest amount of time before it was noticed, ways to bypass human perception, and more. It was all one more step to being able to laughing man anyone I came across. I was getting closer to being able to truly alter someone's sight in real time, closer and closer to simply being a ghost. Hopefully Vic or Hiromi would get back to me soon. Despite having spent all day active on the net, my body didn't get the message and I felt antsy as I paced the apartment. Hiromi had only sent a single update text that she was working on a lead, so I didn't want to just go to sleep. The information from the new perk still flowed through me. I was processing it, but I couldn't relax. My pacing stopped as I headed into my room and pulled out Musashi's katana and headed back to the living room. Drawing the blade, I slipped into the forms, relying on instinct to swing the blade. I'd need to make some adjustments to my quick hacks. While the perk was mostly knowledge of what I could do, there were things I now understood about netrunning that meant with a few tweaks I could make all of my hacks more stealthy. I wonder if I could entice Yoko with an even more stealthy ping? I'd already called my older ping a stealth ping, but that had been arrogant. I could make it even less impactful on a network. I could upload it right to the face of a netrunner protecting a network and they probably wouldn't even notice. Well, unless it was someone like Yoko. The fact was she was still better than I was. I still had heights to reach. I stalled, my blade held for a cutting strike above my head as I held it. There was a moment, a stirring along the back of my neck. I shifted, adjusting to face the door, and then it opened a moment later as June walked in, stopping as he noticed me with my katana out. "Motoko?" "Hey June," I greeted back and lowered my katana, shifting into a completely casual position. "I'm feeling antsy," I told him, and he just nodded. "Well, be careful in the apartment. I don't want to explain to Fujimura-sama why he needs to send someone to fix a cut in the wall." "I'd never. What do you take me for, some sort of gonk, drawing a blade for the first time?" "Yes." I narrowed my eyes and lowered my sword before pointing the sheath at him threateningly. "Those are fighting words," I said, eyes narrowed, and he smirked, drawing his sheathed sword from his hip, pulling the blade out and laying it gently on a table near the door. I walked over and put my blade on the kitchen counter, and then we both shifted. "Prepare to die," I told him, and he snorted. "Prepare to be humiliated." We charged and the sheath smacked as we instantly fell into a rhythm. "Foolish Ni-chan, you will be a good test for my progress." "Motoko, you're embarrassing," he told me to my face, and I responded hotly, our blades crossing and searching each other for weaknesses. June was stronger. Annoying. But he was also more limited. His muscles and strength were limited. Like a bodybuilder going for absolute gains, without realizing that he couldn't even scratch his own back anymore. I abused that, coming up from angles where he couldn't bring his strength to bear, and most importantly, I was just better than him. I could taste his instincts. June had definitely been taught by sensei, but I'd fought the entire dojo. I knew all the common motions and movements that sensei taught, and it was child's play to put June right into a position where suddenly I flicked up and his sheath was flying out of his hands. "Ha! I'm Invin hey!" I growled as he grabbed my wrist while I raised my hands in victory. "That's a real bit I went flying as he spun, lifting me entirely off my feet and flung me like a rag doll towards the couch. I spun, shifting my angle, and landed feet first, spread out and staring right at him. "No, that's bullshit," he grumbled, pointing at my successful save. "How did you do that?" "I just threw you." "Motoko is a ninja, 9-inch nails, 9-inch nails," I informed him, giving a big smirk, and that only made him glare harder. "Ninja my ass. All right, I'm done." He went to grab his sheath and I stood up and wiped myself down to do the same. We both put our swords away and honestly I did feel a lot better. "Thanks Vic," I confirmed, as my favorite Ripper had found something. A RAM upgrade that would be a solid upgrade. It wasn't top of the line, and it wasn't bottom of the barrel, but anything was better than nothing, to be fair. I pulled away from the couch where I'd been lazing around and sent a text to Hiromi. Motoko, Vic pulled through, he found a Zetatech 6.5 RAM. It's usable. Hiromi, hold on. I blinked at the quick response, but Hiromi was going to Hiromi, so I headed into my room to check some stuff. My Tashikoma project was doing well, I noticed. The little drone was wheeling around doing much better than it had when I first put it down. It still spent most of the day exploring my room, but that was fine. Wandering around, I snatched up some equipment, grabbed my guns and such, before stopping and grabbing a katana. I was so close. Just a little more and I could finally level it up. Then I headed out. June was in his room napping, so I left quietly and headed towards the elevator. I could go see Vic while I waited for Hiromi, probably go check out the RAM he found. I'd hate to find some scop shit from another ripper. Just as I was unlocking my quadra, I got a call back from Hiromi. Motoko. Okay, listen. I just got a contact, someone is selling some really nice net-running cyberware. A whole batch. I blinked at how breathless she sounded coming through the agent, and then felt excited. Really? Do you know what? Somewhat. I got confirmation on some RAM, a Raven Micro RAM, T3716. She offered, and honestly, I had no idea if that was good or not. Whoa. That's great, Hiromi. Okay, give me a second to check in with Vic, but I still want to check on this sale. Meet up? Yes. Sending my cords. I nodded, and ended the call as I jumped in. Sending Vic a message asking about the T3716. I pulled up to find Hiromi waiting on the side of a road, obviously having just come out of a market area in City Central, and sliding into the passenger seat. She was practically bouncing, showing how excited she was. I talked to Vic. He said the T3716 is top of the line. Way better than the RAM he managed to find. Great job. Thanks, Hiromi. She sent me a big toothy smile, but then shook herself. Don't thank me yet, we still need to actually buy it. Ah, the dealer is in Dogtown. Fuck. I grumbled, but I nodded and turned towards Pacifica. Yeah, I know. But it's a stand in the old stadium. I got confirmation they sell amazing stuff there, and they'll be there today. All right. Well, we probably don't need to call everyone. We don't. It'll be fine. Bargast are focused on trying to make themselves official, they want things peaceful, especially when it comes to trade. Yeah. I grumbled, as I turned towards Pacifica. I still didn't like it, but Hiromi just shot me a triumphant look and I had to shift my grumpy face to something accepting. Thanks, Hiromi, I know I bug you all the time. PFFT. My #1 most trusted agent deserves the best of the best. How will I earn eddies, if my money maker doesn't have what she needs? She said, completely straight-faced, and I had to shift to look at her before she started giggling. Funny. I know. It's fine, Motoko. We make so many eddies, and this is a great experience. My classes at Arasaka are good, but they leave a lot of things out. Like making contacts on the black market. She said, and I heard her irritation. Stupid formulaic classes. They tell you that having black market contacts can be useful, but don't actually teach you how. But you figured it out. But I figured it out. It's something I can put on my worker log. I've had some of the teachers pay a lot more attention to me after everything. And that's good? It's great. I'm actually treated as an important student. You remember Tomaru? Ah. You pulled your gun on him when he tried to touch you once. It was a while ago. Yeah, I don't. Sorry. I made the turn onto the freeway. Hair. No, it's better that you don't. He used to cause me a lot of problems, thought he was hot shit, but the teachers actually stopped him from fucking with me after class. She smirked. I could see it out of the corner of my eye as she told the story. Want me to kill him? Nah. She denied, and there was a sinister edge to it all. He isn't worth it, and he's below me now in the hierarchy, everyone knows it. His father is a bit higher than my parents, but now I'm above him from my own work. It's made things interesting. Well, I'm glad classes are going well. Yeah. She trailed off, but I didn't press. Hiromi had never really enjoyed her schooling. I think the only reason she even went is because of my urging her to go. But if some shit Lord Corpo was fucking with my tune, I'd visit him and make sure that problem was nipped in the bud. We made it to the massive wall around Dogtown, and went through their security with Hiromi handling the pass, and then we were through. The badly maintained streets rumbled beneath the quadra as we turned towards the old stadium. We found a parking space, and I locked up the quadra and even activated the tachikoma, just in case. I wanted to know the moment someone stupidly tried to steal my quadra. I looked around, double-checking the wandering people around us, as I stuck close to Hiromi. Hiromi didn't seem to mind my presence at her side as I stayed close. At least she understood this place was dangerous, even if she constantly argued the opposite. We headed up the long stairs, past more than a few Barghest troops. Most of them were street kids dressed up like soldiers. New recruits instead of the original unit that had turned traitor and took over Dogtown. Walking inside, I let Hiromi guide us, keeping a close watch on everyone that even walked near us. My eyes locked open, and hand on the katana at my hip. I watched, ready and willing to cut down anyone that caused trouble. No cyberpsychos jumped out of the woodwork, and no one tried to pickpocket, or worse. It was just a normal trip through the stadium as Hiromi guided us to a corner where an old van had been parked. An actual van. I had no idea how it had gotten up here. There must be some sort of vehicle entrance down the way. The side door was closed, and resting against an old beach chair was a netrunner, I guess. It felt like someone trying too hard to appear to be a netrunner than anything. Netrunning suit, goggles, that were pulled up, and some older equipment, an actual external cyberdeck, a Zetatech micromate if my quick scan told the truth. I'm Mitsunashi, here to see Coco. Yeah? The boy asked, his eyes flashing as he scanned over Hiromi, and looked at me. I just waited, letting it happen before he nodded. All right then, chooms. Let me introduce you to the product. He waved behind him, and the door opened. And inside, there was a lot of gear. Cyberware hung from little hooks through the van, plastic bags sealed and hopefully secure. Either way, I'd be doing a full clean before installing any of this. I had a feeling I was dealing with a scav seller now. Good. I'd like confirmation on what we discussed. Yeah, Corp, I get you. He grumbled, seemingly annoyed at Hiromi's professionalism. He stood up and stepped into the van, pulling a few packages off hooks, more than what I had originally asked for. What was Hiromi up to? Then he laid them all out, and I looked it over. There was the Raven Microcybernetics RAM. I looked over the package, doing a quick scan, and it looked functional. You wanted the T3716, right? Good shit right there. Real top of the line. Its former owner was a runner, got de-rezzed going up against Corpo security. His chrome is going out to the public now with a bit of his anti-Corpo spirit along with it. Or I guess if you're core, then you can do something good with his chrome, or whatever you Corpos believe. I'm not. Hiromi started, but then just shook it off. Motoko? Looks good. Nothing on my scan shows damage. Course not. I don't sell scop. Hansen would flatline any dealer here selling like that. I pay good eddies for a space right here. He grumbled at me, but I just nodded, uncaring about his opinion. As if that would stop him from selling me something not working if he could. And the other pieces? Hiromi asked hesitantly, and I took a look away from what I had wanted to see what else Hiromi had found. The first that caught my eye was an X-disc. Something I already had, but... well, mine was scop, Literal trash I pulled from a scav den. This was another top of the line. Same company too. Raven Microcybernetics put out good equipment. It only took a glance over the cyberware to confirm they were functional. Yeah, I wanted it. I reached over and shifted the package on top of the other, then looked at what was left. 2 packages and both. Okay, that was a good selection. I looked at Hiromi and she smiled as I gave her a nod in thanks. Is that Camillo? Course it is. The seller commented. Top of the line. Well, top of the line for stuff that isn't super rare. It's a RAM manager, and not a reallocator. PFFT. If you think I'd be selling a reallocator off the back of the van and not just calling up some top runners to bid it away, you're crazy. He responded back and all I could do was chuckle along with him. Fair enough. I looked it over. Camillo was not what I would call top of the line, but it was functional, and it did what it said on the tin. More RAM, and a faster restore time. It meant more hacks, less heat. I scanned it over, and once again everything seemed in order. Even the cords inside the packaging were individually wrapped so they wouldn't cause any issue for the delicate cyberware. I put it on top of the pile. This was going to cost me, but I looked at the last thing and I put it on top as well. Not as needed, but this was definitely a Hiromi thing. Self-ice. Protection against quick hacks, at least somewhat. I'd have to check what sort of ice it was using, and probably program in something even better. Something more personal, but it would give me automatic protection without me needing to constantly fend everything off myself. Plus it also came with an additional bit of RAM. Literally everything here did. My Arasaka Shadow had 8 RAM, I'm used to an extra bit from my X disk, but all of this equipment together. I'd probably be doubling the available RAM to work with. I couldn't help but think it was time to start installing some bigger hacks as well. I still had that hack that Yoko had given me so long ago. She'd wanted to see what I could do with it, with my programming so far. I put the other package with the others. All right. Seems I got some interested customers. Let's talk price. The runner said with a smile, and Hiromi of course had her smile grow even larger as she stepped forward, nearly into the man's space as she went to work at what she was best at. Hiromi as usual haggled fiercely, but even her best wasn't enough to really give us much, if any, sort of discount. It was fine. I'd been making a lot of eddies, and never really spending it. Buying new cyberware was basically my main cost anyways. Hiromi and I were leaving the stadium. She was holding the gear, keeping my hands free as I kept my eyes on everyone and everything. Relax, Motoko. She whispered to me, voice teasing, but I just smiled at her, and then ignored her anyway. We made it back out to the setting sun and I had a moment of realization that despite how dangerous this place was, and it was, no doubt about that, it still had its own kind of life. I watched people camping out all along the sort of valley that Dogtown was built into. Campfires, and parties. Stupid to do it here, but I guess some people preferred Bargast to NCPD. Just as we were about to hit the top of the stairs I heard it, and stilled. The noise was familiar, perfectly tuned Quadra Super 640 Hyper engine. My engine. Fuck. I whispered as I raced forward for a moment, ignoring Hiromi as I jumped up, getting as high as I could to watch as my Quadra, my baby, with its pretty black paint raced out of the parking area, slamming into a bit of abandoned junk along the sidewalk and then roared forward down the main boulevard away from the stadium. Motoko. Hiromi called out from below me, but I waited, eyes locked, as I went to work. It was already almost too far. I sent a ping and activation code to the trackers that littered the car. I watched as golden spider webs stretched out as the trackers reached out for open network nodes to transmit to me, and then just a bit more the car was too far and my Kuroshi stopped tracking the access lines. But I watched on anyways. Come on. Come on. I waited. There were only a few streets in Dogtown, and the biggest issue was my car was heading right towards the turn-off towards the exit. If my car turned off into Night City proper, it would take less than 10 hours for my car to be turned into scrap and disappear. My network tracking method would be too slow. I saw brake lights as they came up to the turn and felt my stomach drop, but a Bargus truck drove in front of them, and the Quadra's lights turned off and rushed forward, driving right past the entrance to Dogtown, and farther in. I breathed a sigh of relief, even if the air passing my lips came out feeling like Arctic cold. Turning back, I jumped down from the top of the kiosk I'd leapt onto. "Come on, Hiromi. We need to move," I told her, and reached over to help push her forward. "Motoko? Was that your car?" "Yeah," I confirmed, and she had a look of real anger spreading across her face. "Those bastards? Hey you!" Hiromi called out to a Bargus guard that was leaning against the concrete wall of the stadium. "Someone stole my chum's car." She called out, and I watched as the guy just looked at her blankly before shrugging just once, then ignoring her. "Yeah. That's what I thought would happen," I confirmed, still moving her down the steps of the stadium. I needed. "Fucker. Aren't you, Motoko?" "There, let's go," I said, pushing her along away from the Bargus guard that would more than likely just shoot her than listen to her. "What? Motoko? I should call everyone. We need a ride." "We have a ride. I need to get you somewhere secure, and then I need to go get it," I told her back and pushed her forward, right towards the heavy hearts. It would be safer inside there. A booth and time would keep Hiromi safe while I took care of things. Hiromi looked like she was going to argue with me, but instead she simply nodded and put some effort into hurrying up. Good, that gave me time to think. I had my weapons. Lexington with 2 spare mags on the back rig, my Boya with 2 replacement mags, and my katana at my hip. It would be enough, and if it wasn't, I'm sure whoever was stupid enough to steal my car would have some more weapons. We crossed the street and then ran up to the pyramid entrance. The Bargus guards looked like he was going to stop us, but thought better of it, as we slowed and I walked Hiromi inside. "Just find a quiet place, let everyone know there might be trouble. Shouldn't you wait for backup? Isn't that what you always tell us?" Hiromi reminded me as I was already half turned away. "Yeah, probably, but if I don't hurry they might start taking apart my car. I'll keep you updated with my location just in case." "All right. You'll have backup soon, but be safe." I nodded and hurried out the door, breaking into a light jog as I started moving across Dogtown. I didn't know this area at all. I had no idea the safe places, if you could call it that, or the gang territory. The only thing I knew was that at least one person was about to die. When I found out who stole my car, I was going to make it painful. I paced myself perfectly, and wasn't bothered by a light jog. Across broken sidewalks and over old graffiti benches, I crossed the area as quickly as I could on foot. Luckily, Dogtown wasn't that large. I made good headway, ignoring the looks I was receiving from the natives. I raced along the street until it ended, which was annoying, but I was still getting a few stray pings from my trackers. Further forward. As I ran, I ended up running right into what looked like a little shopping district. A large tree of all things, a real tree, stood in the center. I looked around for a moment, but the ping which was coming from what looked like a Netrunner center in a cargo container kept pointing me forward. I jogged through and finally I found it. Turning a corner, I heard it first. Russian voices. There was a chair set into an old container that was looking out over the gap in between 2 containers, and a scav was sitting there keeping watch. Mostly on his TV. Okay. My breath was good, but I had exerted myself. Calm. Cool. I sent a ping to Hiromi giving my location and a brief description of what I'd found. I activated the BD recorder, opening my eyes to a world recorded. Then I peeked out from around the container and pinged the scav. Light splashed across my vision. More and more as the stealthiest ping I could do stretched its web between all the scavs connected to it. I added onto the message to Hiromi that I was looking at 50+ scavs. I reached up and realized I was smiling, my heart hammering in my chest in a completely different way from exertion. An excuse to murder an entire scav den, and a big one? Oh, I was going to really enjoy this. I took a moment to upload another hack into the Gonk. Onryo. I installed it at a very low setting. Basically it would slowly propagate along the network for now, but not actually do anything. Just enough that when I needed I could start really fucking with everyone. Then I moved. Stepping back I took 2 leaps, once against the wall and then over the container. Getting above the guard they had posted. I hunkered down, already cataloguing the moving pieces all around me. Okay, the first target was clear. I leapt across the gap, landing without a sound, and slipping in through the back of the container, behind the scav. My knife came up and I muffled his mouth as steel slipped into his jugular, ending his life. 500 XP gained. I dragged him out of the plastic chair and tucked him into a corner out of sight. No one would even notice he was gone until long after I was done here. This gave me an open view down a ramp and into a broken construction area. The large towers that I was shadowed by were skeletal things, incomplete, and this was where the scavs had set up their home. There she was. Right down in the open, my quadra sitting at the base of the ramp, and people were looking her over. She was still complete. They hadn't started ripping her apart yet. I moved, leaping off the container, and slipping into a crouched position on an old rickety walkway. Using the covered railings to hide myself as I got closer and closer, until I could hear them. I said 6K, that's all I'll do. It's a fucking modded to fuck quadra. She's worth more than that. She's also clept. 6K. I watched as the guy who obviously stole my ride haggled with a full-faced scav. The kid. No, I shouldn't call him that, he was older than me, probably late teens, and he was a target anyways. He would die. He looked like he wanted to argue even more, but eventually just tissed and nodded, holding out a hand. He shook with the scav, and the deal was done. 6,000 eddies. For my car? My baby? The shit in her trunk was worth more than 6,000 eddies. I watched as the thief handed over a shard. He'd already copied the shard. That was actually impressive. I could do it. Probably. Never had before, but that was impressive considering it hadn't even. Well, he probably started stealing my car the moment we went into the stadium. The little thief turned and walked up the ramp, 6,000 eddies richer. I followed him. Tony Gonzalez. Tony walked calmly out of the scraper's yard, and only when he was sure that he was out of sight did he hurry a bit more to get away, finding a quiet corner to duck into and catch his breath. Selling to scavs was always a danger. Tony kept his Lexington visible in his waistband, just in case. He checked his account, 6K. That was a lot of eddies, not as much as the car was worth, but it was good eddies, more than he'd make in a couple of months working some scop job or worse. Easy eddies. He'd go buy Melissa that skirt she'd been looking at. He wouldn't mind seeing her in it. He patted his jacket, the car cracker was still there. It was his key to a good life. He'd clept it from a dead runner. Old Etienne was a VDB, Tony did some work for him, moved things and the like, but he'd gone to pick up a new package only to find the old runner fried. So Tony had helped himself, getting the fuck out of there hopefully without anyone noticing. He hadn't gone for any of the gear. Nah, that was shit that the other boys would notice missing. No, he clept the little things that Etienne made. A car cracker, a runner stunner, and all the eddies he knew the old man kept around, as he didn't trust virtual eddies. It worked out for Tony. Months of living real quiet, letting old Etienne's death blow over until no one would ever think Tony had anything to do with it, or that he had clept something from the old man. Then when his eddies were running out, he'd gone out to keep an eye on the stadium lot. He couldn't clep a ride from locals, or anyone too important. There was a way of things, and pissing off Bargast would end with him dead in a ditch, but some outsiders coming to use the black market? Outsider kids even? Just a couple girls, corpo and street rat, coming to the black market to feel the thrill probably. Buy something illegal, get into some trouble. Now they'd have a story to tell about their stolen souped-up car. Probably daddy's or something. Tony nodded as he made to move on, only he couldn't. His legs dropped as quickly as his blood pressure, as his throat was opened up. 250 XP gained. I took a moment to look through the gonk's pockets, a stun stick, nasty fucker 2, and a car cracker. It'd sync up to a vehicle's onboard computer override the key system, and with just a press of a button most cars would flash a new key and you'd be off. The only problem was, my Quadra had good security, it probably took a while to crack. When I got out of here, I was going to update the security even more. Fucking hell. With that cleared up, I headed back to the tower that was basically a massive scav den. I looked over the numbers from back on top of the storage containers hidden among the refuse. There were netrunners around, but not good ones. These weren't security runners, but thugs. People with quick hacks meant to try and disable their targets, and while normally I'd be a lot more wary, with my stealth quick hacking perk that I'd just picked up, I felt like a ghost as I uploaded more hacks through the gonks I could see standing around my Quadra. There were a lot of people just inside this construction area, and it was a surprise just how many more of them lived inside the half-finished skyscraper. This was a nest. Maybe even a distribution center for a massive scav gang. I'd never heard anything about this place, but then again if the data I'd gathered led to Dogtown I'd also ignored it and moved on, thinking it was insane to follow it. Good thing I was feeling particularly insane at the moment. Onryo had spread to everyone. Time to initiate level 1, I sent out the code that would cause her to start getting a bit more aggressive. I needed to clear out the stragglers first. There was a sniper along the side, he'd be my first target, just to be safe. I moved, jumped up and onto the rooftop, only taking a moment to look up, to make sure I'd be out of sight of anyone on the upper levels of the scraper. Then I moved, sticking to the shadows cast by the setting sun, and moving across the construction site unseen. I heard it as I approached, one of the guys around my Quadra yelped and started yelling at his buddies. Onryo was doing her job. I slipped down from the containers that surrounded the area, landing without a sound right behind the sniper scav. He had good gear even walking around with a grad of all things. Not really beating those Russian connections there, pal. It's fine. He was hidden up above the rest of the construction site, and so when I slipped behind him, and ran my sword through his heart from behind, grabbing his mouth to quiet his startled gasp, he died easily. 750 XP gained. Nice. Extra XP. With him dead, I had superiority over the entire area. No one else was really on Overwatch. It was time to wipe out some scavs. I heard the first real scream as I was making my way through the shadows, unable to hide my grin as Onryo was working. Sure, going completely stealth would probably have been better, but I wanted to see how Onryo did. I still needed to do more updates to it, but a little field test was a good idea. That, and I didn't want them to focus on my car. I'd already tried to call for it to come to me, but the car cracker that little shit had used had overwritten the key shard I still had. I'd have to override whatever bullshit this thing had done. But first I needed to clear out some assholes. I slipped down among the shadows even as the cries of panic grew louder. Onryo was working hard. Grabbing at hands, or legs, or running fingers over cheeks from behind. Which the poor bastard's agents all made them feel. The network integration was working too, as I started hearing the gonks scream at each other when the ghostly form of the Onryo would slip out from behind someone's back with her claw-like hands. Of course there were a few working to fix the issue. The netrunners were already trying to hunt down the demon in their network, but like I said, they were thugs. I pulled out my knife, readying myself as I took over the demon and set up a vector. The netrunner had a moment to see Onryo slide up from below his sight, climbing out of his shadow and then clambering up onto his chest. Each time she touched him as she climbed he'd feel it, and then it was revealed the massive knife in her hands. Oh, fuck off. Whoever is doing this. I know it's just a fucking trick. He yelled out, trying to act tough, trying to act like this was nothing so his tunes would calm down. Which is why when Onryo thrust a knife into his throat, I made my throw. There was a moment, I could tell a dichotomy where what was happening to him didn't make sense and he tried to deny it. But the blood flowing out of his mouth as the blade stuck through his throat stopped all of that. The Onryo laughed, warm and sinister, and disappeared. Which revealed the truth to all of his tunes. The screams. Well, I had to admit it gave me warm feelings inside as the scavs went from reacting to some weird shit to realizing they were in a horror movie. 750 XP gained. I had one more knife, and then I'd have to start collecting more. I grinned. The shock, the fear, it already affected their ability to try and pin me down. Instead of sticking together, or sending out groups, the scavs were splintering, some were running in fear back into the building, some together, and some started firing randomly. One scav actually shot one of his tunes when the Onryo was sliding along that guy's face. 500 XP gained. I guess if I got some idiots to kill each other it still counted? That was nice. There were about 16 scavs in the area at the start, 2 down, 14 more to go, and then however many were in this building. Time to get to work. I started running, rushing through the maze like stacks of containers and trash that was built up all around the area. I knew where they were, but they had no idea where I was. The first scav I ran into was hiding. Shotgun pointed towards the only area where he'd jammed himself. The posher was shaking and wavering. Unfortunately I had just leapt above him and was looking down on him now. I pushed up the Onryo's effects on him. Suddenly, hands were crawling up his face, scratching and clawing at his eyes. Agents weren't meant to cause pain, but well. His scream was pretty horrible, and while he was blind and scrabbling at his eyes I leapt down, kicking the posher as I landed, knocking it up and out of his hands, until I grabbed it out of the air and pointed it. The blast echoed in the little cubby between 2 containers he'd tucked himself, and then I just dropped the posher and leapt back out. 500 XP gained, gone like a ghost. I decided to wait and see, laying down on top of the container and just letting the chaos continue. 3 scavs came to check on the noise, and when they found their tune, or what was left of him, I adjusted their own effect. The feeling of the Onryo scratching at their eyes gave me all the time I needed to leap in between all 3 of them. My katana was shifted, and in a single move I drew my blade, 3 bodies and 3 heads fell. 500 XP gained. 500 XP gained. 500 XP gained. I once more disappeared, slow and steady, lure them away. Get them into smaller numbers, and then blind and remove them. Honestly, when I'd originally come up with Onryo, I hadn't thought of its effect of being able to cover some poor gonk's eyes. Adding in the pain mechanism, and using that like an optical reboot? I had to admit, this was much more powerful of a hack than I'd expected. Daniil Antonov. The screams as the setting sun was coming through the open spaces in the half-built skyscraper were not something he wanted to hear. Fucking hell. What is going on now? He grunted as he left his own little room. Being the boss of the place had its benefits and a bit of privacy was one of them. What's going on? He called out, looking around as more than a few others were coming out of rooms to find out what the hell was going on. He hurried down when no response came. Shit. Grab your weapons. He roared to everyone, grabbing his own posher and hurrying towards the elevator. When he arrived he slowed down so he could process what he was seeing. One of his men was shaking and disturbed, scratches ran across his face, and they looked self-inflicted. Cyberpsycho? He gripped his gun tight, just in case. What the hell is going on? We're under attack. The man checking on him called out. Some runner is fucking with our boys. They're seeing ghosts, and more are showing up dead. Daniil considered this. There were two paths forward for him. Send more men downstairs, maybe even start ordering everyone down to kill this scop sucker. The other was to wait it out. Netrunners had to see you to hack you out. He didn't have security cameras up here, and his boys had every route up, locked down. Someone dangerous enough to start slaughtering his men was dangerous enough to just let them do what they wanted. But that would make him look weak. Dmitri. Take your squad, clean up this mess. Daniil ordered, and looked up at the man. Dmitri was his group's heavy hitter. The most borged-out fuckers in the group. Ex-Sov Oil's Special Forces. They were what Daniil used when shit got bad. The guards he used when he had to deal with Bargast, or any of the other players here in Dogtown. You heard him. Dmitri didn't wait, roaring out and holding that massive HMG of his. His squad of killers clambered into the elevator. There, whoever was stupid enough to fuck with him was dead. Now to deal with these idiots getting scared of some piece of trash causing trouble.